Hey New Hope family, it's Pastor Matt with your devotional thought for today. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul writes, "Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile." In this particular passage, the Apostle Paul is addressing divisions within the church in Corinth, that these divisions had arisen, and as these divisions had come up and these factions had been taking place, the people were utterly divided amongst themselves instead of being united as the Lord had intended. And the whole point of it being certain people would claim to follow this guy or that guy instead of following Christ altogether. And so they were claiming allegiance in other places where it didn't matter. And ultimately, the only allegiance that counts is Christ. And the rest of the people were servants of Christ, whether it was Paul or Apollos or Cephas, i.e. Peter. And so he's addressing this here, but the reality is people would think more highly of themselves than they ought. And that's what led to these divisions. They wanted to associate with this person instead of these people because this person got it right and these people were wrong, or whatever it might be. And the reality is it is Christ. It's about Christ. It's always been about Christ. And as you think about this admonition specifically, that they should become fools in order to be wise because the wisdom of this world is not worth pursuing, the Apostle Paul is not just paying lip service to this. He actually does this very thing. In fact, in the book of Acts, as he's providing a defense for himself, as he stands before various different leaders, there's a comment made specifically about how all of his learning has caused him to go mad in the head, to basically become a fool. He's become so educated and so wrapped up in this religious learning and religious understanding that he's become a fool. He's gone mad in his thinking. And I think that's where he's writing from at this point, that really in order to become truly wise, it's not about resting in the wisdom of man or resting in the things that this world values, but rather what the Lord values. And true wisdom then means being thought of as a fool in this world. That doesn't mean we go out there to look like idiots, but the reality is that our value system is different. And what drives us, our desire to learn, our desire to understand, our desire to have true wisdom, isn't found in puffing ourselves up with just plain temporal knowledge, but rather with knowing who our Lord is. And the more we know who our Lord is, the more actual understanding we have of our God, the more we realize how foolish we truly are, how much we really lack knowledge, how much more there is to know because we can only barely scratch the surface, and even that is only based upon what the Lord has revealed to us. And so I so appreciate here that he's trying to get the people to recognize that, man, if you think you're wise in your own eyes, in your own estimation, then you need to stop and actually become a fool, because realizing the amount of wisdom that our God has and the amount of wisdom that we can have comparatively, the only rightful response is, I'm a fool. I do not know anything compared to all that my God knows, all the wisdom and knowledge and understanding that are out there. So he says that first and foremost, but what that does then is it also humbles us. It forces us to say, I don't know as much as I might think I know. So instead of thinking of myself more highly, I'm going to be more prone to think of you, think of this other person, somebody else more highly than myself. Instead of elevating myself with my wisdom, I'm going to say, no, I'm super limited in what I know, but here's what I do know, Christ and Him crucified. And that's all that I need to know, frankly. And so Paul's saying that very thing. And the reality is that our Lord does catch the wise in their craftiness, as he says in verse 19. And then in verse 20, when he says that the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. See, that's why we saw even last Sunday in our sermon, this past Sunday, that Jesus is a wonderful counselor. He counsels in wonders. It's things that confound the listener, and that's the reality. Our God's wisdom confounds our minds, and He uses the simple things of this world to confound the wise and to bring them down. And so, brothers and sisters, rather than estimating ourselves as wise in this world, rather than pursuing wisdom for the temporal things, let us seek the Lord, and let us seek to become fools in this world and wise in His wisdom, understanding who He is and knowing Him, that we might actually gain true wisdom that's beneficial not just for this life, not just to be thought of highly by men, but wisdom for living our lives for all of eternity with God's glory in mind.